What is going on, guys? Benny here. We are here today to talk about this beautiful speaker. This is the Triangle Borealine BR03s. So let's check it out after the intro. Alright guys, so we are here today with this beautiful speaker. Like I said in the introduction, this is the Triangle Borea BR03s. This is the light oak version, so if you want to see that real quick, we're going to kind of go over the outside. So yeah, this is, I do believe, a veneer on the outside, or a vinyl wrap. I think it's a vinyl wrap because this doesn't feel real. But in terms of that, it does wrap all the way around, which is pretty awesome. Let me take this beautiful tweed grill off. Ooh. So yeah, it does go all the way around the speaker and all the way to the back, which is pretty awesome. So it looks very stylish. Then you have those amazing binding posts on the back and that beautiful mirror finish on it. I think you guys can see that. Yeah, see? Mirror. All right, so let's turn them back around so you guys can see them. So this is, like I said, the Borea BR03s. So many people have done this, reviews of these. But in terms of that, let's kind of go over the specs, I guess. I'll throw up a little spec sheet here so you guys can see it. So we'll just kind of go through some of this. So this is also obviously a two-way bass reflex, two drivers. So obviously you have the tweeter and the mid-range and bass there. It does have a sensitivity of 90 dB. It does go 46 hertz to 22 kilohertz. It does have a nominal wattage range of about 100 watts. It is 8 ohm also. So in terms of that, let's kind of get into the technology. So get rid of that spec sheet there. But so what we have up here is something this is called the EFS tweeter, I guess you would say. I'm looking at my notes. But in terms of that, the EFS tweeter, it's efficient flow system, I believe is what it's called. So basically what it is like, this is a 1-inch silk dome tweeter up here, and it's kind of like this phase plug that they have here. So the reason for this phase plug, at least what I can tell, and what I've noticed from listening to it for how long I've had this guy, so with this, basically what it does is it disperses the tweeter sound. So it kind of can create a bigger sound stage in terms of dispersing the sound in a wider pattern. And when you have two of them together, working in tandem, it makes a very decent sound stage, which is great. And then also for the mid-range and the bass on here, we have a untreated paper cellulose driver, which is really nice because then these sound very natural and very nothing like too crazy going on there. They say it doesn't colorize the sound, it just makes it sound natural as it can be. And then you do have the ports. They're both front ported, so you get two of them up the front and out of the front, which is great. So not saying you want to slam these up against the wall, but if you don't have much space for these to pull them out away from the wall, this does help with the bass response, so it's not like just completely overpowering everything. So with the highs, there is some semblance in the top end. There's like a bump there where when you listen to specific songs with specific singers, where it gets a little sharp, just a little bit sharp. And when it comes to that, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, you know it. So, and in some songs, I go back to this as kind of like what happens when they have that little bump in the mid to highs. It happens with a couple of the singers that I listen to a lot. So you have like Haley Reinhart, A couple of her songs, they do sound that way, but she does have that type of scratchy voice where it's not the most seamless, I guess you could say, in the type of voice she has, but it's kind of like that scratchy jazz type of voice, and it can get a little bit like it kind of hurts a little. And again, I'm kind of like sibilant sensitive, I guess you could say, so in terms of highs, I don't like it too crazy up top. I like it a little bit more relaxed. One of the other things with the highs, it does have very decent resolution up top. When it comes to how this sounds, it gives you a lot of information for the price range. So again, these are only $549, but in terms of anything for $600 or less, I think this is one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard. And that's a lot to say in terms of what I've noticed. So with that as well, let's kind of like go into the mids a little bit. So with the mids, I did notice with male and female, this speaker does have a little bit of a bump in the middle. So not so much that it's forward. It's not like it like if you're listening to a very like a live performance, it's not like they shove all the vocals into your head, but it does have a little bit of a bump there when it comes to listening to how they deal with the singer's voice. So it does push it a little bit forward, but it does sound sweet, and it's not like it overextends to where it feels really strange. Like if you're listening to a male voice, it's not like gonna overextend and feel too forward. Like if you're listening to Johnny Cash or someone with a very deep voice, it does reach very low as well, which is really good. So in terms of the mids, sweet, very good sounding. That's where this speaker definitely shines. If you guys watch Zero Fidelity, he says the same thing, and I totally agree with him. So Sean. And with that, yeah, it definitely feels that way. With that, this speaker, for some reason, it's not a big speaker. Like it's a bigger speaker, but not that big. And this thing it definitely extends down to the 46 hertz that it says, and it has a lot of it. So one thing with that, even though it's front ported, it definitely has a very lively bass sound to it. It has a lot of quantity. It's the same thing with kind of the highs as well. So but it has a very good energy to it. One of the things about this speaker that does really well is if it's kind of like a party speaker. So I would say if you want to listen to things decently loud and you don't really want to use a subwoofer, you could slam these up against the wall and you'll have enough bass for a pretty decent sized room. So I would say this is kind of like a party speaker, and that's fine. It's not so much that it's colored in terms of the sound itself, but it does have a decent quantity of bass. So if you want to have it sound more natural sounding and a less bass quantity, I would say give it a little bit of room to breathe off the wall. Another place that I did use this in 3 different places. So I did use them on stands in here in my garage here, and this garage is somewhat sound treated, so it sounds really good in here. So I did use it on stands, get away from the wall about 4 or 5 feet. Sounds great. Sounds very good, very sweet mids, like I was saying about the other sounds. When it came to using it near field at low levels, these are sensitive enough to where if you don't need a ton to drive them. So even in near field, they still kind of work. It's a little bit overpowering sometimes, but if your desk is far enough away from the wall, you could still use these technically in a near field. You can use any speaker in a near field, but these still work in near field. And even though they're kind of big, if you have the desk to accommodate, they sound great there too. But in terms of the place that I think they sound the best, in terms of application at least, they sound great on stands. Like I said, like 3-4 feet away from the wall, sound natural, great sound stage, very, very sweet sounding. But one of the things that these do really well that I noticed was when I put them in my home theater. I use these as my left and right channel. And because of this little EFS system that they have here with that phase plug up there, it did a really good job at dispersing soundstage for movies and TV. And that was something that's one of my testing areas, and I do that with all the speakers to see how well the soundstage is without towing in. So one of the things is this does work very well if they're slightly towed in on stands, and it does sound better. But again, in home theater, these shine very well. Very, very well. One of the other things is for the sibilants, if you're listening to them on stands, another way to kind of dissipate that a little bit is use the covers. Use the grills on them. And they're just these beautiful gray tweed grills like the what I had on earlier. And they're put on by magnets. 2021 magnets. So with that, I would say if you want a speaker that can do all of those things for under $600, this is the speaker to get. If you want to listen in a more intimate listening, where it's like you just listening on stands, these work. If you're going to use them on your desk, kind of near field, these work. If you want to use them as your left and right channels in home theater, these work really well. Because they, again, with that phase plug that they put in there, it puts out enough soundstage to where you can feel like you almost have surround sides on certain sounds. In a specific room, obviously, but it does sound great. So in terms of this speaker, I've kind of talked about this guy for about 13 minutes, I think, 14 minutes now. Who is this for? I would say if you're just getting into audio, or you love sweet mids, and you want kind of a more budget-friendly speaker, and you kind of have like the crazy hi-fi stuff already, but you want this like for another second listening area, these are great. These kind of fit everybody. And this is one thing, is this price point, it's really crowded right now, because now you're getting things that are like a couple $100 less than this that sound similar to this, but don't fit the all-around type, being able to do all three of those types of listening applications. When it comes to this guy, it can be used in all three listening applications and sound good. Not amazing in all of them, but in terms of my listening, this speaker sounds really good in home theater and also more intimate listening. Near field, it does do very well as well, but in the two applications it does best at is on stands as well as in home theater. I myself like that they're in home theater because I turn my sub off and kind of push these slightly more towards the wall, and it fills in a very good amount of bass for home theater. So if you were gonna use it with like a preamp and then just use this into like from an amp and use a preamp to the amp and like kind of sub these for a soundbar, yeah, use these. Because soundbars, no, not a thing in hi-fi. I don't care what they say. It doesn't sound as good as these with that type of situation. Alright guys, so there was one more thing I wanted to go over with this speaker specifically, is like I said, this thing can do an all around of almost everything. But one of the things that if you're going to be using this for, in terms of types of music, So in terms of that, it works really well with anything but metal. And when it comes to like heavy rock, like certain things, like if you're listening to like Godsmack or more mainstream types of rock music, not metal, but rock music, these do really well. When it comes to like pop music or even dubstep or electronic music, these do really well. The one thing that this doesn't do well is metal. The reason being, I think it's just how the crossover is in this guy. But another thing is this bass woofer, it can't keep up. So if you're listening to these very loud and you're trying to squeeze metal out of it, in terms of that specific type of music, because we all know if you listen to metal, it's speed metal or even death metal, these won't keep up. And that's one weakness of this speaker that I did notice, is I think it's just where the crossover is, but this woofer can't keep up with that type of speed. And I think it's just the matter because of since it's a paper cellulose paper cellulose mid-range and bass driver, it just can't keep up with that type of speed. But again, it does do very well with heavy rock music and more classic types of rock music, but not metal. So unfortunately for us metalheads, this is not the speaker for you. So with that, guys, that's kind of my view on this and like my experience with these guys. And these have kind of been done to death, but I just wanted to give you like my experience with them. And having them for as long as I have, these check all my boxes. Again, it's probably one of the best, most all-around speakers you could have under $600. And again, Triangle, thank you so much for sending these to me for review. And again, guys, I couldn't recommend these more. So I will see you guys in the next review, and I'll see you then. Later.